Welcome to the store. Don't forget to subscribe, and support me.
The world was cloaked in the dark veil of demon rule, where humans, the once proud species, were reduced to nothing more than chattel. Their lives were dominated by the whims of demons, creatures far more powerful than any human could hope to be. Villages were governed by fear, cities ruled by tyranny, and hope was a word spoken in whispers, if at all. Leah crouched on the edge of the village, the cool wind blowing through her tangled brown hair. She kept her eyes on the horizon, watching as the faint glow of the distant demon outpost flickered against the twilight sky. It had been a long day in the fields, the harsh sun burning her skin as she worked alongside the other villagers. They didn't talk much anymore. What was there to say? They were all waiting for the next raid, the next command, the next cruel punishment. She clenched her fists, feeling the sharp stones bite into her palms. Leah was no stranger to pain. She was a half-blood, born of a human mother and a demon father. Her mother never spoke of it, never spoke of him. The villagers treated her like dirt, like she was one of them. But deep down, she knew something was different about her. It wasn't just her demon blood that set her apart, though that was part of it. She had always felt a strange power inside her, something ancient and wild, something waiting to be unleashed, but that power had never surfaced. Not until today. The raid had come just after dawn. The demons, cruel and arrogant, swept into the village like a storm. They didn't need to, of course. The humans were beaten, broken. But the demons enjoyed it, the fear, the subjugation. Leah had been in the square, trying to keep her head down as always, when one of the soldiers had dragged a young boy into the center. The demon had taunted the child, pulling at his hair, slashing at his clothes. And something inside Leah had snapped. She didn't remember what happened next. Only that the demon was dead, his body crumpled at her feet, his dark blood soaking into the earth. The other demons had paused for a moment, surprised, before rushing at her. But Leah had run. She wasn't a fighter. She was a nobody, a half-breed outcast. And yet, she had killed a demon with her bare hands. The village was silent now, the people too scared to speak of what they had witnessed. Leah knew she couldn't stay. They would come for her. The demons always found their prey. A rustling behind her made her tense, her fingers curling around the hilt of a knife at her belt. But it was only Mara, the old woman who lived at the edge of the village. Her eyes were sharp, even in the fading light, and she hobbled over to Leah with a knowing expression. "I saw what happened," Mara said, her voice low. Leah didn't respond. What was there to say? She had killed a demon. She had signed her own death sentence. "You're not like the others," Mara continued, her gaze fixed on Leah's face. "There's something inside you, something powerful." Leah turned away, her heart pounding. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to think about it. Mara took a step closer. "You need to leave. They'll come for you soon. But you can't just run. You need to learn how to control it." Leah's jaw tightened. "Control what?" "The power in your blood," Mara said, her voice steady. "You are the last of an ancient line, Leah. A bloodline that was thought to be extinct. The power you felt today is only the beginning." Leah stared at her, her mind racing. The old woman was crazy. She had to be. Leah wasn't special. She was a nobody. But then she remembered the demon's body crumpled at her feet, the way the power had surged through her, unstoppable, uncontrollable. "I don't know what you're talking about," Leah muttered, turning away. Mara's hand shot out, grabbing her arm with surprising strength. "You need to understand, Leah. The demons, they fear this power. It's the only thing that can stop them. That's why they hunt for those with blood like yours. That's why they kill anyone who dares to stand against them. But if you can learn to control it, you could change everything. Leah pulled her arm free, her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't want this. She didn't want to be a part of any of this, but deep down, a part of her knew that Mara was right. Something had awakened inside her, something that terrified her. And if she didn't learn to control it, she wouldn't just be a danger to herself. She would be a danger to everyone around her. Leah left the village that night, her footsteps silent against the dirt path as she disappeared into the wilderness. The night was dark, but she felt a strange sense of clarity, a purpose she hadn't felt before. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stay. Days passed as she wandered through the forests and across the barren plains, avoiding demon patrols and scavenging for food. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and anger. She had been thrust into something she didn't understand, something far bigger than herself. It wasn't until she stumbled upon an old, weathered man in a cave deep in the mountains that she began to find the answers she had been seeking. His name was Jaren, and he was unlike anyone Leah had ever met. He didn't flinch when she told him about her heritage, didn't recoil when she mentioned her demon blood. Instead, he nodded, as if he had expected it all along. "You're not the first, you know," Jaren said, his voice raspy but strong. "There have been others like you. Humans with the blood of the ancients running through their veins. They were powerful, more powerful than the demons could ever imagine. But the demons feared them. They hunted them down, one by one, until they were all but wiped out." Leah listened, her mind racing. "So, what does that mean for me?" Jaren looked at her with piercing eyes. "It means you have a choice. You can run, keep hiding, hoping they never find you. Or you can embrace what you are, embrace the power in your blood, and fight back." Leah's stomach twisted at the thought. She wasn't a fighter. She didn't know how to lead a rebellion. But the memory of the demon's blood on her hands, the surge of power that had coursed through her, was impossible to forget. Jaren began training her in secret, teaching her how to control the power in her bloodline. It was slow at first, frustrating. The power was wild, difficult to harness, but Leah was determined. She practiced day and night, learning to channel her energy, to focus it, to bend it to her will, and as the days turned into weeks, she began to feel it, strength unlike anything she had ever known. She could feel the ancient bloodline inside her, pulsing with untapped potential. Jaren pushed her harder, testing her limits, teaching her not only how to control her power but how to use it in battle. "You are more than just a weapon," Jaren said one evening as they sat by the fire. "The strength of the bloodline is not just in the power it gives you. It's in the heart, the will, the determination to fight for what is right. That's what makes humans so dangerous to the demons. That's what they fear most." Leah's brow furrowed. "Why? Why do they fear us so much?" Jaren's gaze darkened. "Because we are relentless. When pushed to the edge, we don't break. We rise." Months passed, and Leah's power grew. She wasn't the same girl who had fled her village in fear. She had become stronger, more confident, more dangerous. But she wasn't alone anymore. Jaren had introduced her to a group of rebels, humans who had also discovered their hidden potential. There was Mira, a fierce warrior who had once been a slave to the demons, and Jaren, a strategist who had spent years studying the weaknesses of their enemy. Together, they formed a tight-knit group, each with their own unique abilities, each united in their goal to overthrow the demons. Leah became the leader they needed, her bloodline power serving as a beacon of hope for the oppressed humans. As they traveled from village to village, rallying more people to their cause, Leah began to see the strength in her people. They had been beaten down, crushed under the weight of demon oppression, but they were not broken, they were ready to fight. The first battle was small, a strike against a demon outpost deep in the mountains. Leah had led the charge, her power rippling through the air as she cut down the demons with a force she hadn't fully realized she possessed. The humans had fought with everything they had, driven not by strength alone but by the sheer will to survive. When the dust settled, the demon outpost lay in ruins, and Leah stood at the center, her heart pounding, her body trembling with the rush of power. But the victory came at a cost. Several of their own had fallen, and Leah felt the weight of their deaths pressing down on her shoulders. She was their leader now, their hope, and every loss was a blow to her soul. Yet the humans didn't waver. The spark had been lit, and it was spreading like wildfire. Leah stood among the wreckage of the outpost, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. The battlefield was quiet now, save for the crackling of a few fires and the groans of the wounded. Blood stained her hands, her clothes, even her face, but she hardly noticed. All she could think about was the look on Jaren's face before he fell, the way his eyes had gone wide with surprise as the demon's blade found its mark. Mira approached her, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "We did it," she said, her voice raw with exhaustion. "We actually did it." Leah nodded, though she didn't feel the victory as strongly as she should have. The cost was too high, and they were just getting started. Jaren had been their strategist, their guide. Without him, Leah felt like they had lost more than just a battle-hardened friend. They had lost their compass. She knelt beside Jaren's lifeless body, brushing a strand of his silver hair from his face. For a moment, the world around her seemed to fade, and all she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. "We're not done yet," she whispered to him, though she knew he couldn't hear her. "I won't stop until we finish what you started." Mira stood silently beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. Leah closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the warmth of her friend's touch remind her that she wasn't alone. When she stood again, the weight of leadership settled more heavily on her than before. She didn't have time to mourn, didn't have the luxury of grief. They had to keep moving, had to keep fighting. The rebellion couldn't falter now. "We need to regroup," Leah said, turning to Mira. "Gather the others. We'll bury our dead and move on." As the remnants of their group tended to the wounded and honored the fallen, Leah found herself alone with her thoughts. The power inside her simmered just below the surface, a constant reminder of the responsibility she now carried. She had come so far, had pushed herself beyond what she thought possible. But now, standing in the midst of this destruction, she wondered if it would ever be enough. The demons wouldn't rest. They would retaliate. And with each victory, the danger only grew. Days passed as they moved from one hidden camp to another, avoiding demon patrols and gathering more allies. The small, ragtag group of rebels began to grow. Word of Leah's victory spread through the human villages like wildfire, and people came from all corners of the land to join the cause. They looked to Leah as their leader, their beacon of hope, and while that should have filled her with pride, it only made the weight on her shoulders heavier. Mira became her right hand, helping to organize the new recruits and train them in combat. Though Leah had taught her people to unlock the hidden potential within themselves, it wasn't enough. They needed strategy, they needed discipline. They needed to be more than just a band of rebels, they needed to become an army. Leah stood on the edge of a cliff one evening, looking down at the growing encampment below. Hundreds of people now lived there, training, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the demon overlords. She could hear the clash of swords, the grunts of exertion as the humans pushed themselves to their limits. It was a sound that had become all too familiar, and yet it still felt strange. These were farmers, laborers, and craftsmen, people who had never known how to wield a weapon, who had never thought to fight back. Now, they were warriors. Leah's thoughts were interrupted by a presence beside her. She didn't need to turn to know it was Mira. "We're ready," Mira said quietly. Leah didn't respond immediately, her eyes still fixed on the camp below. "Are we?" she asked after a long pause. Mira sighed. "We have to be. The demons are closing in. Their scouts have been spotted nearby. It's only a matter of time before they attack again." Leah nodded, knowing her friend was right. The demons wouldn't give them much more time. They had pushed too far, gained too much ground. The overlords would come down on them with everything they had, and when that happened, there would be no turning back. "We need to strike first," Leah said, her voice firm. "We can't wait for them to come to us. We need to take the fight to the heart of their empire." Myra's brow furrowed. "The capital? That's suicide." Leah finally turned to face her friend, her expression resolute. "It's the only way. If we wait, they'll destroy us piece by piece. But if we hit them where it hurts, if we cut off the head of the snake, we can cripple them. We can end this." Mira looked at her for a long moment, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're asking people to lay down their lives." Leah's eyes hardened. "I'm asking them to fight for their freedom." Mira nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I'll rally the troops." Leah watched her go, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. The final battle was approaching, and with it, the possibility of victory, or utter destruction. Either way, there was no turning back now. The days leading up to the march on the capital were tense, filled with preparations and last-minute strategies. Leah spent hours with the captains, planning their approach, mapping out every possible scenario. They would have one chance, one opportunity to strike before the demons could rally their full forces. If they failed, there would be no second attempt. On the morning of the attack, Leah stood at the head of the gathered army. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the assembled troops. They were a mix of young and old, men and women, all united by a single purpose. Their faces were etched with determination, but Leah could see the fear in their eyes. She felt it too. She took a deep breath, then raised her voice so that it carried across the field. "Today, we march to reclaim what is ours. The demons have ruled over us for too long, have treated us like animals, have crushed us beneath their boots. But today, that ends. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every human who has ever lived under their oppression. We fight for freedom, for our future, for our children. We fight because we have no other choice." Her words hung in the air for a moment before the army erupted into cheers, their voices rising in a unified roar. Leah felt a surge of pride, but also a deep, gnawing fear. This was it. The final stand. The march to the capital was grueling, the terrain unforgiving, but they pressed on. As they neared the city's massive gates, Leah's heart pounded in her chest. The capital was a fortress, surrounded by high walls and guarded by legions of demon soldiers. But they had planned for this. They had prepared. The battle erupted with a deafening roar, the clash of steel and the crackle of magic filling the air. Leah fought at the front, her power unleashed in a way she had never before experienced. She tore through the demon ranks with ease, her bloodline surging within her, fueling her every move. But even as she cut down the demons, she knew this was only the beginning. The true fight was still ahead. As they breached the gates and stormed into the heart of the capital, Leah led her forces toward the citadel, where the demon overlord awaited. Her breath came in short, ragged bursts, her muscles screaming in protest, but she pushed forward. There was no time to rest, no time to think. Only the fight inside the citadel, the final confrontation with the demon overlord unfolded. The demon was massive, his power overwhelming, but Leah stood her ground. She could feel the ancient bloodline pulsing within her, a strength far beyond anything she had ever known. The battle was fierce, the demon unleashing waves of dark magic that threatened to tear Leah apart, but she held on. She fought with everything she had, drawing on every ounce of power within her. Finally, with a cry that echoed through the halls of the citadel, Leah struck the final blow. The demon overlord crumbled, his body disintegrating into ash, and with him, the last vestige of demon rule fell. Leah stood in the aftermath, her body trembling with exhaustion. The rebellion had succeeded. The demons had been overthrown, but as the humans celebrated their victory, Leah could only feel the weight of the losses they had suffered. So many lives had been sacrificed, so much had been lost. And though they had won, the road ahead was uncertain. They would have to rebuild, to forge a new world from the ashes of the old. Leah turned her gaze to the horizon, her heart heavy but her resolve unwavering. They had won the battle, but the fight for a better future had only just begun.